Let me take you to 3 months after my diagnosis. I thought MS was going to take my life away, and all the dreams I had for the future with my work and my family were all going to be gone because I was going to be so fatigued or end up in a wheelchair or be blind or whatever it was I was telling myself at the time. I had always been someone that thrived on my work. I worked in television and I loved the environment and I loved everything I did within it. 3 months after I was diagnosed with MS, I thought that was all gone. I was so fatigued, I didn't know how I would put a full day in. And even if I could do a full day, was I going to be as competitive and be able to keep up with sort of the ideas? I'd lost my mojo. Like, there's no two ways about it. I had lost my mojo with work and I really didn't think I was going to get it back. And work was something I loved and I thrived on. You'll also hear a lot about invisible symptoms with MS, and it's real. I remember at that time, I was sitting in meetings with 10 people, everybody's discussing whatever we were talking about, and anyone I looked at had a big black dot across their face. I couldn't see their face properly. But they would be looking at me and I would just be working, I'd doing the job, and that used to take the edge off work for me. And I, at that point, thought, how am I going to maintain this job with these people if I can't even see their faces? So now 4 years on, I'm running my own business. MS hasn't taken anything away. I've totally got my mojo back when it comes to work. And I'm even riding my horse, which I couldn't, at first I couldn't ride because of heat. As soon as I'd ride him for 5 minutes, I'd lose my vision. Whereas I'm riding my horse again and things are very different. It does get better. Sure, some days just are not perfect, but I promise you, you will learn how to manage them.
Having MS has certainly impacted some of the things I'm passionate about, but I learnt really quickly that I needed to make some adjustments to make life sustainable, and I needed my life to fit around the MS. And because of that now, I can do the things I want to and live quite well with MS.
Since being diagnosed with MS, my goals and passions haven't changed at all from a few years ago. I still ride and I still think about where I want to be in a couple of years with my horse riding. So in that sense of things, MS hasn't taken away anything from me at all.
Having MS has given me a completely different perspective on life. I'm completely the same person. I still go out with my friends. One of my favourite things to do is travel. I work in a wonderful job that I love, and if anything, my life has never been this good.
I definitely have a full life with MS. I try to make the most of my time. MS is definitely not something that has to hinder you. If you want to do it, you'll be able to do it.
There's loads of misinformation about MS and it can be very confusing. So we want to bust some of the myths that are out there. Myth: I have MS, therefore I can't work. This is a myth. What do the stats tell us? The unemployment rate for people with MS is only 3.5% higher than the general population. 90% of people with MS who request changes in their jobs receive them. And in fact, job retention is higher for people who tell their employer. But everybody's situation is different, so consider yours when deciding to tell your employer.
So when I first found out that I had MS, I was obviously in hospital and had to take time off work. So work knew that something was wrong, and when I found out it was MS, I made sure that I told them the truth. They were wonderful. They were so much better than I ever could have imagined. I felt the pressure on myself to go back to work as quickly as possible, but they didn't want me back. Truly, they said, we don't want to see you for 6 weeks. Go take care of yourself. And then when I did come back, nothing had changed. Everything was as it was. With a newfound understanding as well. I think it's really beneficial to be open about your MS. Not only is it beneficial for me, but I think it's also beneficial for the people around me. They feel like they can openly discuss things MS related with me. And it's also cool though, because they keep an eye on what's happening with MS things in the world, and quite often they'll come back and say, I heard this, I heard that. And it sort of gives you the feeling that even myself and all the people that I love around me, we're sort of all in it together.
I was a journalist for many, many years and had a fairly, we'll call it a fast-paced career in journalism. And I now still write, and I write every day, but I write books, so I haven't lost the passion for writing. I've just made it into something that's a little more conducive to having the off day or having weird hours or whatever it might be.
MS doesn't affect fertility, and the vast majority of women who have MS have a normal pregnancy and normal deliveries. After giving birth, the immune system returns back to its state as it was prior to pregnancy, and so for some women that means that their MS becomes active again and they have a relapse. We think that the chance of relapse is increased for about the first 6 months after giving birth.
When I was first told that I had MS, one of the main concerns that I had was how that would affect us starting a family because we were newly married. And all I can say is that it hasn't affected that. We have gone on since being diagnosed to have 2 children who were both born after I was diagnosed. I had my first child 4 years ago, and I had all of the normal considerations that any pregnant woman has having their first child, but with just the added overlay of having MS. And to deal with that, I made sure I spoke to my neuro about my condition. I read high quality information, and I spoke to other mothers with MS who have children. I found that by speaking to other mothers who have MS and who have children always gives me an added level of reassurance that backs up the information in the articles. Having that real life perspective really brings that to life and gives me that added reassurance.
Myth. I have MS, therefore I can't have children. This is a myth which close to 40% of Australians believe. But if you have MS, you can get pregnant. Actually, MS has no effect on your fertility rate. Research shows that pregnancy has no long-term effect on MS progression. Actually, you have fewer relapses during pregnancy.
What we see is that young women are having babies later in life. Women are predisposed to become tolerant to the baby. So this is an immune process. When you're pregnant, your controlling immune cells are getting up in your body so that you don't reject your baby. The sooner you start with the process of pregnancy, the more tolerant you are to antigens. And I think that is a factor. So we've done 180 degrees with pregnancy. So 20, 30 years ago, neurologists would have recommended their patients not to have children because you might get disabled and not able to look after your child. Now we know the more pregnancies you have, the less likely you actually do get diagnosed with MS.
When my neurologist first told me that I had MS, my very first question was, am I going to die? And my mother, her very first question is, can she still have children? To find that yes, I can have kids is wonderful because eventually I do want to be a mother, and it's great to know that that's not going to be an obstacle and I'm not going to be held back by MS and having children.
I had 2 kids under 3, and then I got diagnosed when my wife was pregnant with our 3rd. So I wasn't sure what it would mean to me in terms of could I work, what would it mean in terms of how could I deal with young kids, how could I be a support in the family, how am I not a burden in the family where there are 3 kids under 4. Thankfully, getting on top of it earlier with all the lifestyle changes and my medication, I started to feel like I was getting control back, and I started to see a real future where I was going to be around for my kids and for my family.
Some disease-modifying treatments are suitable for use within pregnancy, and some are not.
Most MS specialists will not take patients off their treatment when they decide to want to become pregnant. This is because we now also know that it can take a year or 2 until you fall pregnant. There's some medications that you can take while breastfeeding, and there's evidence for that, that it is safe. Most medications are still not recommended in the prescribing to take while you're breastfeeding because they do come into the breast milk. The injectables are probably safe because they're broken down in the gut of the baby. But we do see that it can have an effect, but nobody has really done prospective studies on it.
Life can be great, and it is great. You know, I have 2 kids, I have a husband, we have, you know, a wonderful life. We have fun, I live a really positive life, and I don't worry about every little thing that people seem to worry about.
12 years after diagnosis, I have an incredibly busy and very full life, full of friends, family. I do work that I absolutely adore. I still travel all the time. I still get to go on adventures.
Despite having MS, I'm living very, very well with the disease. I'm very, very lucky, and it doesn't stop my day-to-day routine, what I do, run around after my kids. I'm very lucky that I can do all those things that any normal person would do.